He gets the try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Strawberry gets over the line. Try from Munster.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Hello and welcome along. I'm Alan Quinlan and you're listening to episode 70 of the Red 78 here on the Rugby channel. And with me as always is Niamh Briggs. You're still smiling, Niamh?
Always.
You'd no match to upset you at the weekend anyway.
Well, no, our second last out to Kerry in the Munster Divisional Cup final in Tralee on Sunday. Cracking game, 26-24. I don't know if you've ever been to Tralee Rugby Club. The scenery
I have many times.
incredible.
Yeah, many times.
Incredible. Yeah, so great. Brilliant for them as well. I was actually, obviously devastated for our girls because they put a really good season in for a development point of view. But teams like that, they got to try and find ways to get more senior players playing rugby and amalgamating a number of clubs within a region to make a county team. They've done it really, really well. So I was delighted for the hard work that they've done, to be fair, down there. So great match, yeah.
Okay, it's been confirmed just before we get on to the men's game that Greg McWilliams is gone. I'm sure you're sad to see him go. There's a bit of change there and uncertainty. The Irish women's team are now looking for a new head coach. What's your position? Or I think on the statement that came out, the rest of the coaches are staying involved, staying part of the team.
Yeah, and obviously I'm delighted because it's been a really, really tough campaign, and it'll be weird coming back in here without Greg, I think, because he's a huge personality, and you're disappointed. I was disappointed because we got on very well and we were very aligned in our thinking. He's really good to work with, but ultimately I think the difficulty is that in a high performance sport it's a bit ruthless, and good learning for me from somebody that's come into this very recently, but it's results business driven business, and we just didn't get the results, unfortunately. So look, I wish him the best, himself, his wife and his family. They're the nicest of people you could ever meet. So we just go back to the start again.
What does it mean for the team now in Tier 3 of this new world competition? The fixture in October in New Zealand, is that right?
No, I think we're looking at Hong Kong for Tier 3. Tier 1 will be in New Zealand, Tier 2 in South Africa, I think. And then I think there's talks of Hong Kong. Look, it is what it is. It's where we are. And I think we go in and we play the likes of the loser of the Spain-Italy playoff, or the Scotland-Italy playoff, sorry. We look at, the Netherlands and a few more countries like that. So it's going to be, I know Fiona Hayes has been floating Jamaica around. I don't think it's Jamaica we're going to be playing, but it'll definitely be a starting block, and it's got to be that. And if we don't learn from the last 6-7 weeks, then we're at nothing really. So we've got to go with a clear plan in place and a clear pathway. And to be fair to John and Ed and the lads, they've been working really hard over the last couple of weeks since the Six Nations finished.
And what's the situation with trying to qualify for the World Cup?
So we need to get out of Tier 3 next year. So if we win that, we go straight into Tier 2 for the following year. And within that, the World Cup, we qualify for the World Cup straight off. If not, then we have to go through a repechage.
Okay. That's a long way off, but anyway, it is what it is, as you say. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be more positive stories coming out in the future with the team. Let's get on to the big game on Saturday night. Munster, not surprisingly, won the game because I think a lot of pundits, spectators, fans, rugby people knew that Munster had a great chance and there was a real possibility they could go there and beat Glasgow. Obviously, that was going to be a very difficult task, but they won the game 14-5. So they're in the semi-final. From a results point of view, it was great to go there and win. It's a very tough place to go. They haven't lost there all season, and they've scored a lot of points in their performance there. For Munster to keep in the 5 points was a big positive as well. So I put a tweet out yesterday again to the Munster fans. We always want to try and keep them involved. They're all pretty pleased. I think it was a dogged performance. They had to really kind of roll up their sleeves. we'll talk a little bit about the injuries in a little while.
Well,
I'm sure
it came at a cost. Like, let's be very realistic. When we got the injury report out yesterday, that result came at a cost, and how we managed to use that as a positive is going to be really big for this group this week. But you asked about the performance and can they find another one this week against Leinster given the injuries. Richard Daly said hard fought, and the number of HIAs has to be called or looked into more in the off season by the governing folk. Surely Saturday is a big ask, but it's nothing we've not faced before. Lads need to have a right go and put their hands up. John Tewig, I'm not hung up on next week. This week's injury toll will make a result very hard to come by. Leinster will rotate, but their second string are more experienced than ours. We must understand we are years behind Leinster in our development. Bring on next year when it's a long pre-season. Liam Sheehan, really strong performance, particularly in defence. Big ask this week, but after the start we got this season, a really credible outcome. With last Saturday's injuries, it'll be a big ask, but a great opportunity for the second line players to step up. Paula Carter, huge shift put in Glasgow. Immensely proud of the boys. We're in bonus territory now, so more of the same Saturday, please. Tom Lundgren, massive performance in Glasgow. The momentum of this group just keeps growing. A free shot for Munster in the semis, and it was well earned and deserved. Some injuries to big players, yes, but that's rugby. Munster in this mood in knockout rugby are dangerous to any opposition. There was a couple of more tweets. I'm just going to group them because I know we're kind of called for time, but there was a couple of more tweets in relation to the HIAs, which we'll obviously chat about. My favourite tweet came from Granny Babs. Get your mam and Marie O.C., whoever Marie O.C. is, togged up and onto that pitch.
Mary O'Callaghan.
Oh, Mary, sorry. If they can't put the fear of God into Leinster, no one can, armed with the holy water, obviously. So I don't know I know you were working for TV for Premier, but Bernard Jackman was on RTE and he spoke about having met the Munster coaching ticket before the game started, and he really wasn't surprised that they had won because your mom had dropped in the holy water. I've only heard about this over the last few weeks with the tweets coming in. This is obviously something that's been going on for years, has it?
It's gone on for probably 20 years, I'd say, or more, since I was playing. She was a regular carrier of the holy water to the matches, and she would always give the water or the holy water to Pat Geraghty. It's obviously since passed, and he was a great friend of everyone in the teams and all the experience as well. So yeah, the holy water seems to have done the trick on Saturday night anyway. But anyway, as I said, it was going on for about 20 years with my mum, but she'll need lots of holy water. I think they said it on the TV. Bernard said it in Newcastle that she might be led into the Aviva on Saturday. But anyhow,
and does she just give it to the coaches, like to bring into the dressing room? Like, do the players know? Do they understand?
Whoever she meets, if she meets someone from the staff, or she's usually down around the side of the pitch. If she walks down from the stand and hands it into someone, Fiona Murphy sometimes takes it, George Murray. So whoever, but anyway, the holy water is there for a long time, and
brilliant. I think it's brilliant. I don't know how I haven't heard about it since the last few weeks.
Yeah, it happened all the time when I was playing. But anyway, there's a few more tweets you want to read out.
Yeah, there's a few more just in relation to a couple of the players, the likes of Jean Klein. So divided looks at Jean Klein, Hodnett, Coombs. Are we looking at getting them into? Would we be annoyed if they weren't in Carton House basically for the World Cup prep? Those three,
well,
especially.
I think so. Gavin Coombs, John Klein, and what was the other player?
And
John Hodnett. Yeah, I think both. John Hodnett obviously came on for Peter O'Mahony, and he was brilliant. His tackling was outstanding. He's worked great. Munster didn't have a lot of ball in the second half for sure. But I thought he was brilliant. John Klein again, and he's done it all season. I think he's been playing brilliant for Munster this year, and even in games that they've been under pressure, the Gavin Coombs, I think, obviously he's had a lot of big performances this year. He's won Star of the Week a few times with us. He's got plenty of Man of the Match awards, but I think there's an argument to say that they should be in the mix, and they probably will be in the mix. I just love for John Klein, I think his honesty and work rate and
Yeah.
dedication. I think it'd be
for a
lovely to
long
see him get
time.
back in.
Yeah, I agree. I think for a long time there was question marks in relation to his ability to play. You know, he was he's a great workhorse, brilliant rucker, one of those real like old dogged second rows that every team needs. But the game is evolving, and I think there was question marks in relation to his handling and his ability to catch and pass, and to be that kind of, you know, be able to go to the line and to be able to move those tip-ons or little balls at the back. I think
All that
he
stuff has improved this year.
So improved. As in, like, for me, he's jumped Ross Maloney this year in terms of that. I think we've not seen enough of Ross Maloney from a Leinster point of view. So I would agree. I think I would be frustrated for John Klein
I think he's very, very much appreciated by the Munster fans.
Yeah.
One of the areas that Glasgow had their big strength going into this game was their maul. And you just look back at the game and you see the strength of him at stopping their maul and his physicality. So I think his game has gone to a new level.
Season. Yeah, he's probably been my player of the season in terms of consistency and his engine and everything. I have one out there tweet from Gavin Murphy. He asks, can we discuss Simon Zebo? Re-signed from Racing and partly funded by the RFU. Can't make a Munster squad with a shortage of fit back 3 players this weekend. His name isn't even in the mix. What's going on? Is he contracted next year?
Well, I think he is contracted next year. He's had a number of injuries this year. It's been disappointing because we've only seen glimpses of Simon. He's that X factor player. He just brings that bit of magic, but you can't blame the guy for being injured, because obviously if you pick up injuries. But from a business point of view, we haven't seen enough of Simon Zebo. It would be brilliant if he was available. I really thought it was brilliant when he came back, because I thought, he can get back into the Irish mix as well, but he hasn't consistently been in the Munster mix for various different reasons, and it's a pity. Season probably can't come quick enough, the end of it, for someone like him to get a good pre-season in and try and add some value to the squad next year. But there's nothing that I know about or anybody publicly knows about. I think he's just been unlucky with some injuries, and he's a great player. I did hear that there's a chance he may be available this weekend. From a fitness point of view, I don't know where he's at, but it's a pity, because
it's a big ask, isn't it, then, to come in like from cold. Like, at least I know there's another query in relation to Joey about potentially coming back in or whatever this weekend. Like, Joey's been in the match day travelling squad for the last number of weeks. I know he hasn't played, but you know, Simon's been at home in Limerick for the South African trip, for example. So you're missing that big bulk of work. So it will be interesting to see. And it also kind of starts to, that was a big thing for me last weekend in terms of the strength and depth. You know, we went with a 6-2 split. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But in my mind, I was like, the 2 boys, Calvin Nash and Shane Daly, have been playing unbelievably well. Obviously, Keith Earls picked up that bad injury in South Africa. And then Zebo we don't speak about him. He's not in any injury updates. He hasn't been for a long time. So is he back training and just finding it hard to get back to that match fitness? But the next group down there's a big gap, isn't there, in terms of the likes of, say, Patrick Campbell and these young guys. You know, it's a big ask for any of them to come into that mix for next Saturday.
It is, yeah, it is. And look, who knows who they will select, whether Joey will come back in. He could be an option to put him in at full back, put Mike Haley on the wing. But the injury toll is massive. Liam Coombs is out, Andrew Conway. They've just no cover in that backfield. So Calvin Nash being injured is actually a big loss. Malachi Fekitoa, particularly in the backs. I think they're better equipped up front, albeit if you're missing Peter O'Mahony, John Klein, they're incredible losses, because there's a feeling that if Munster had a full team. But look, we'll get on to the Leinster match in a minute. Let's talk about the performance. So you can't read out every tweet. Positives and negatives. We start on the positives. So for you, the positives, I think the biggest one for me is defensively, and from a collisions point of view and an attitude, that was top notch. They were really up for this game. They got the emotion right. They weren't going to be bullied. I think I saw one of the tweets where someone was questioning, and you mentioned it about the HIAs, were Glasgow overzealous, were they doing something illegal? They weren't. They were very physical themselves. It was a physical game. There was nothing that could have been, that you would indicate that they were targeting Munster players from a high tackle point of view. I know Tom Jordan was sent off for the Conor Murray one, and rightly so, but the others, I think, were just freakish collisions, unfortunately, and we don't often see them. So the positives for me, obviously, we can't go through every positive in the game, but the ones that really jump out, and the stats here are kind of crazy. Munster down for 36 missed tackles, but then I'm saying, and everybody's saying, one of the big positives was their defence. The reason I think that numbers are down and high from the missed tackle point of view is the evasion of a lot of Glasgow players in close quarters and turning back inside. Munster players maybe missing an initial tackle and then making the second one a real impact one. So as I always say, the stats do lie. Stats sometimes lie, but Munster's defence was outstanding.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at that banana where you're getting that outside player to shoot, you're forcing them back in. You're forcing them there because they're not going to. It's very difficult when you're coming at pace to make that bridge pass over that outside rushing defender. And Fecto was great at it. Shane Daly was very good at it. Calvin Nash, that ability to get off the line as that outside defender and put a huge amount of pressure. So you're forcing the Glasgow player back in. So while it stepped across you or gone back in, it looks like a missed tackle from you. Gary Ringrose is exceptionally good at doing it as well for Ireland, for Leinster. His ability to read the place, get ahead of it, not isolate himself, but it puts that little second of doubt in your mind. You step back in, and that's where the tackle has been made. Munster were really, really smart in relation to that, because that was the big fear in Glasgow's back three play, their ability to transition very quickly. They'd obviously scored a huge amount of tries leading into this game, and I thought so smart. But like that missed tackle was counted because they'd forced them back in as opposed to actual missed tackles from a square up point of view.
The maul defence was the other one, and again, you can say that's defensively. How did they stop that Glasgow maul, or what was different from a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, look, you're probably asking the wrong person in terms of technical stuff around the maul. I think what they've done really well is they chose their moments to get up. I thought that was really, really important. And then the minute that they didn't, that they were able to smash that, they smashed the back of that maul. And okay, I know they were penalised once, I think, for jumping across Finine, I think it was. But I thought in terms of understanding how to smash and turn it in, so they use the touchline to their advantage quite a bit. That just takes away a lot of that attack threat then. But it was mindset. They were ready to go. I thought they were excellent.
Yeah, well, one of the when I did the positives negatives a few weeks ago, Munster Glasgow, it's 5 weeks. It's on the 25th of March. Was it 25th or 26th of March when Glasgow beat Munster in Thomond Park? I had the positives down as second half. That was it. And the reaction. I had the negatives down as scrum, line out, physicality, attitude, energy, where it puts them in the table. All those things changed. So, we did speak about it then, even spoke about, it was unlike that Munster team. I know we saw some stuff the week before, the couple of weeks before against the Scarlets, where defensively in that second half, they kind of got a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit sloppy defensively. But all those things that I mentioned there, the negatives a number of weeks ago, were changed because the scrum was so much better. One or two penalties there, I noticed pressure, but by and large, that scrum held up really well. And Stephen Archer again, Jeremy Lockman, the players that came on, that was so much better. Their line-out work themselves, winning their own line-out was really good. And Graham Rowntree said it after the game. Anyone watching this, the physicality and the collisions here, a lot of that is down to attitude and real desire to get stuck into Glasgow. So loads of positives.
My big positive was the 10-minute block right before half time. They kept Glasgow out. I think that was, if I'm right. And there was another big moment where they
No,
were
I
defending
think
for
the start of the game was the key. That
start. Was it were they on
yeah,
their
start. Yeah,
start of the game?
15 minutes in the first
And then the
half
second
where
half, they were literally on their line, and their discipline was really, really good. Their ability to get back onto their feet was exceptional. So we talk about being back in game all the time. And I just thought that their cohesion in around that, nobody panicked. They were turning over and exiting, get a line up back on their 22 again. And it was like a regurgitation, and I was sitting at home going, oh my gosh, like this is going to be like, how are they going to keep them out for this long? But I thought that was really, really huge positive.
I think if you look at the game, the first 15 minutes, Glasgow brought so much pressure. Munster were kind of hanging on, and I was thinking they can't keep doing this, but they turned it around. Malachi Fekito makes a tackle in midfield just before the first
Incredible.
try. Turnover, massive impact tackle. Munster turn it over. They go up the field, score 7-0 after absorbing a lot of pressure. Big psychological boost. A couple of minutes later, they turn it over again at the breakdown around the midfield. Conor Murray's breaking up the touchline. Tom Jordan makes a tackle. Red card. Unfortunately, Conor Murray had to go off. Munster score from kicking that into the corner again, and it's 14-0. And you think psychologically, it's massive for Munster, and it's a big blow to Glasgow. I think if we're looking at where they could be better and where they need to be better with what's ahead, is that period before halftime when Munster were camped on the Glasgow line, and they're attacking and attacking and attacking. They could have killed off the game there, and they didn't. And probably lacking a bit of control in that second half. They didn't have a lot of ball. Tactically, I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought they should have kicked a little bit more. Now, they didn't have a lot of ball, but there was a win there, and Glasgow really struggled to get out of their half. And to be fair, you have games like that where Munster they actually look like just really in control. Not a lot of panic. I think for the Glasgow try, Tadhg does shoot out of the line. He admits that straight away after the game. But they never really looked like losing this game.
I was demented from them being in the power zone or the scoring zone for so long and not being clinical enough. It was like, that is definitely something that they have to improve on. They worked so hard to get into that zone, and you've got a period of minutes where you're putting the defense under pressure. And at one stage, I could see Ben Healy in the second half doing this, and he was like literally like stamping his foot, trying to get the ball. Like, as in, they must have had a 4v1 at one stage. It doesn't come out quick enough, and then they've turned the ball over. I think if you're Graham Roundtree or Mike Prendergast, that's actually infuriating from the point of view of like this. What, like, we just had a little bit of white line fever. They've just got to be a little bit more clinical, because this weekend, look, let's face it, they could 100% go and match them up physically and everything. But if they get chances, and when they get chances, they have to be able to take them. So there has to be more clarity around what they're trying to do in that zone, especially 5-6 meters out from the line. There
was chances there when they were picking and going that it just 2 passes, 3 passes, and one of the backs would have scored. So as you said, Ben Healy's looking for it. There's a number of times, and at the end of the game, they had a penalty. They tapped and went after the Tupolota was yellow carded. It was 15 against 13 there. I was surprised. I thought to just kick the ball over the bar and see out the game, but it didn't matter at that stage. Glasgow weren't going to beat them, so it was a brilliant win, and I think that so many positives outweigh any sort of negatives that you would find anyway.
That was old Munster of old, wasn't it? No offense, but like, I know we don't want to talk about history all the time, but that was like gritty. It was resilient. It was just like, it was body on the line type of stuff. And look, the injury toll tells us that, but that you can work with that, Quinny. That's what gives me a huge amount of hope for this group going forward.
Yeah,
and from a coaching point of view, I'd imagine the same.
And where they're at, I think what they've shown in the last 3 or 4 weeks, Niamh, has been brilliant. To go to South Africa, and they've beaten Stormers away, drawn with the Sharks, and then beaten Glasgow away. Teams, the Stormers hadn't lost. And now Leo Cullen was saying that yesterday in the press, so he's thrown back. trying to give Munster a bit of credit, but given all the injuries they had in the game, so difficult to cope. Peter O'Mahony to start, then you see RG Snyman going off, Conor Murray, Diarmuid Byrne, John Klein, or Calvin Nash, and Fekito as well. You're just thinking, God, this is freakish. It's a freak situation for it to happen.
Had
Somebody
that happened
said
last year, though, Munster wouldn't have won that game.
so, and you know what,
That's
Niamh?
how
Somebody
much they've
said to me,
grown.
and asked me, like, is this a real concern that you had RG Snyman, Conor Murray, Calvin Nash, and Malachi Fekito, 4 HIAs in a game? It's certainly something that we're not used to seeing. But the good news is, rather than being negative about that, is probably 10, 15 years ago, that was a common thing, and none of those 4 players would have come off the field.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
it's better now that they're being protected that way, that if there's any doubt, they first of all they go off for the HIA, and then they're checked over, and that period. Honestly, a lot of before would have been, you know,
yeah,
bit of water and dust yourself down. So I think we would have seen a lot more of that before, if 10, 15 years ago, that if the HIAs were as stringent, and it was. So World Rugby get a lot of criticism about, and rugby gets a negative kind of slant, and there's a bit of fear and worry about it, which some of it is very much understandable. But that wouldn't have happened before. Those 4 players probably would have had to dust themselves off, and would have tried to carry on. So in one way, it's a shame, but in another way, it shows that these players are being monitored as best they possibly can. Brilliant win, deserve huge credit. And by and large, you know, you can look at nobody's done that to Glasgow there in a long, long time. And that's Munster really fronted up. So they deserve huge credit for that. The obvious thing is they need to be better with their attack this week and take their opportunities. And there's a lot of bonus territory. People are talking about that. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Start of the week. Well, it was such a dogged-like performance. I'm kind of leaning towards John Klein. Gavin Coombs got player of the match. But I do really think there's 2 other players I want to mention here. And Malachi Fekitoa was outstanding. And in some ways, it wasn't me who picked player of the match. It was Chris Patterson. I'm not blaming him. I thought Gavin Coombs was brilliant as well. He really fronted up, had some big turnovers. And his performances have been very consistent. And I think his work without the ball was really impressive for me. And that was a big part. But John Klein constantly making tackles, carries, breaking up mauls, been really, really physical. He was outstanding again. But Malachi Fekito, that early tackle, he scored the try. I think he's a hell of a player, and he's
it's pity we've only starting.
Yeah, we've seen in the second half of the season, and I think it took him time to settle and get into the way Munster were playing and all that kind of stuff. But he had a brilliant performance. Finian Wycherley coming on for RG Snyman again, like he did in the Stormers. I thought he was brilliant. I think he's
come back in incredible shape from injury.
Yeah, he is, and he was ripping into Glasgow players the other night. So they're kind of the 3 players that stood out for me, including 4. Gavin Coombs obviously had a big game, but I'm going to go John Klein. Are you happy to give him the start of the week? It's a big honour.
Yeah, it is. So he's delighted.
Okay. A lot of the headlines yesterday and Sunday were Mission Impossible. That word was mentioned. So I'm just going to read out the kind of recent results, the doom and gloom for anyone that doesn't know it. In the last 12 games between Leinster and Munster, Leinster, Leinster have won 10, Munster have won 2. So you go back to in the league, the last time Munster beat Leinster was in 2018-19 season. It was December 2018 in Thomond Park, 26-17. And obviously we had the Rainbow Cup there that Munster went to the RDS and won 27-3. So 1 league win and 1 Rainbow Cup win in those 12 games. We've lost the league semi-final in 2019. League semi-final in 2020, league final in 2021. And that game in 2021, 16-6 in the RDS, I don't know if you remember, it was kind of,
I do, yeah.
it was during that COVID period again.
I was
don't think
working for that.
There was no crowd. Well, we did
No,
that game together, did
yeah.
we?
I know I was working for Live 95, I think, for that game, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
and that game was the most consecutive wins in the history of that fixture, 6 in a row for Leinster. The next one then, obviously, the Rainbow Cup. But I think one of the games that jumps out for me, the one that really jumps out, is that Aviva game last the end of May last year. The season ran a bit later. Munster, more or less, fairly strong team out, pretty strong as they could be. Leinster played a lot of their second string players. They won 35-25. That was a tough one to take. It was kind of the end of the season for. It was the second last game for Johan van Graan, wasn't it? They lost the last game in Ulster. But we've lost twice this season to them, 27-13 back in October and 2019, the game down at Thomond Park at Christmas. So sorry for reading out all that doom and gloom.
Yeah, let's
it just shows where they're at. And obviously the history of
Quinny, we know where they're at. We know exactly where they're at. Their evolution and their development is ahead of Munster's, and that's kind of pretty factual. So what we've got to start thinking about now is where we can find weaknesses within that Leinster group. Where, do we have opportunities to score? And we absolutely will. I think that what probably worries me a little bit is that Leinster are probably going to, bring more of their first team back this week than they did last week, so that they have minutes under their belt for that European match the following week, if I'm correct. And then, or is that 2 weeks? But you know what I mean? Irrelevant to that in terms of they'll definitely give them minutes if they didn't give them minutes last week. So Munster then are obviously going to be missing big leaders within the likes of Peter O'Mahony. Hopefully he'll be okay, but we still don't know. But Conor Murray's gone, Fekitoa's gone, Calvin Nash, RG, and our point of difference has to be something now that we can be really, really good at. So for a while there, I thought with RG in there, we could have looked at the line out, because I still think at times when we get to critical positions within the scoring zone. We've coughed up a number of lineouts throughout the season, and that's got to be something that we've got to be so clinical, because when we get opportunities this weekend, we've got to take them, and we can't leave money behind. We can't waste these opportunities. I think that's going to be a huge point of difference for this group.
So it's obviously it's very obvious you're going to the best team in Europe, the best squad in Europe that we think they have. They've so much depth. They made 9 changes from Europe to the game last week with the Sharks. They're going to make a number of changes again. They've got a final next week against La Rochelle. They've potentially got a final the week after then. So I'm sure Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster, and the rest of the coaches in Leinster would have sat down a couple of weeks ago and mapped out the type of teams they've got to play in the build up to the final. Obviously, they go as strong as they possibly can against La Rochelle in the final, but they probably have to maneuver a little bit through this. So he said there's going to be rotation, but if
it's rotating back to firsts, he has to give them minutes after giving them last weekend.
Yeah, but there was still a lot of them started. There was still a lot of them started last week. Tyke Furlong, Hugo Keenan, Caelan Doris. So obviously they're going to make a number of changes and be strong. Either way, they're going to be very, very strong. Mission impossible is the word I used that I've seen a lot. Bonus territory. So is this bonus territory? Is that a kind of a defeatist attitude, just looking ahead to the game?
No way. It's look at the 7 games at the start of the season. Did we ever think we were going to be in a position? We were begging to try and get into a playoff position at the start, you know what I mean, in January, February. We were on, kind of questioning whether we'd even get into Europe, and now we're in a semi-final of the URC. Point, yeah. So incredible season for Munster from where they started in this coaching group. And a tweeter said it, and I completely get it. We are totally, literally, have this ability now to be able to put our own stamp. They do their own stamp on that pre-season and having an elongated ones that they hit the ground running for the start of the next season. But I think it's definitely bonus territory, and I would definitely think on their day they could totally pull it out of the bag.
Yeah, I often think
You
of
don't.
no, I do. Of course, I think they can do it. They can. I just love to see them bring a performance that you can kind of be proud of, and they can be proud of themselves that they can
Yeah.
go, well, we were sloppy here, we give away too many penalties, and we needed more aggression and all that kind of stuff. But look, I think they've shown a great honesty and desire in the last couple of weeks, so they've been brilliant. It's a tough task and unlikely win, we'll say, but we're hopeful. So anyway, we look forward to analysing it next week. Thankfully, this week wasn't our last one, but so that's it for episode 70 of the Red 78. And good luck, enjoy your week, Niamh, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Queen. Chat you. Thank you.
The Red 78 with Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
I'd like to think I know a lot.